Welcome to the Dig Endurance Podcast, where we are all about digging deep and discovering the power of emotional resilience. I'm Aaron, and I'm joined by my brother, Sean.
As endurance athletes and business owners, we have learned a thing or two about facing and overcoming adversity. We are here to share inspiring stories from our guests that will help you to find that inner strength when you feel like you are running on empty.
Are you ready? Let's dig in.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Dig Podcast. We have a really good guest today. We've got David Adams. David has a long rap sheet. We've got Ironmans, marathons, half marathons. I'll let you say what you've done. But David, thanks for being with us here today with Aaron and I. We are very excited to hear your story. I know we've chatted a little bit about some of the stuff you experienced when you were younger. I just want to dive right in. Give us a little background, family, married, kids. Were you born and raised here in Fresno? And then let's kind of talk about your life.
Oh, hey, thank you guys for having me. Just a little bit about me. Not married, but I have 3 kids.
Okay.
Two ex-wives, but hey, that's another story. I'm
Got it.
telling you. I grew up here in Fresno, but not ultimately grew up here in Fresno. I mean, I was born here, and then right when I was 6, was ultimately in Texas.
Oh, cool.
So crazy transition, but from there, that's when I want to say ultimately my life took a really crazy turn. I mean, I was in foster home, taken away from my biological mother.
Oh, wow.
And so I ended up in the foster system. I mean, 14 different homes. I was in Texas, Madera, Tahoe. I was just basically bounced around completely through my whole life. I mean,
So these foster homes were in different places like
different aspects of the country.
And that's from ages how old to how old?
I mean, it's from 5 to 6 to about maybe 17, and I started raising myself on the streets.
Basically, your whole childhood, you're in foster homes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But and then a lot of the stuff that I endured in those homes. When you hear foster homes, people hear great, oh, you know what, you're in a foster home, people took care of you, people loved you. You have different, but there was a reason why it was 7, 14, why you left here, why you there, and it's a great testimony to my life story, what leads up to why I become this endurance athlete. And some of the stuff that I endured, and you wouldn't know it by seeing me from me walking through the door. Some of the stuff that was, I was mentally and physically abused. Can you imagine just sitting there and just because somebody felt like they wanted to lash out at somebody and just getting punched in the face and thrown across the floor and just certain aspects of that. One of the foster homes, maybe this be a little too much, but a lot of people don't know. I was raped. I mean, I was 6, 7 years old, and a lot of people don't really understand how long it took to share some stuff like that, because when you're in a foster home, you're a kid, you're supposed to have this persona of a great home, but it's not. But what happens behind closed doors, nobody really sees. And for a long time, I was ashamed, to even mention or even be a kid, So ultimately, it created who I was today and who I am today. I mean, that's just a little bit.
That's a lot. I mean, so what? And what? So I mean, and at what point you said you went? You ended up on the streets. I mean, so obviously you've had some really hard experiences through the foster system and unfortunate experiences, but when were you able to break out and go on your own? When was that? What was that point?
I want to say maybe 15, 16, 17, somewhere around there. I mean, when you're traumatized with so much stuff, you kind of lose track of time.
Yeah. Where were you?
I was here. I came back here. I ended up coming back to Fresno, and it wasn't like I'm gonna go and it's basically I ran. I try to run as far as I can. You can ultimately say that was my first running event.
That's how you found it, huh?
Right? I mean, it was just you go and don't look back, and you find that inner strength to say, you know what, today's enough. You know, no matter what it looks like or how dark it looks out there, you're gonna find a way to survive. You know, and that's whether it's going to be in abandoned houses, or friends' houses, or cousins' houses.
What was the final breaking point? Like, what was it? It finally, I mean, just finally clicked. Like, I got to get out of this. I can't do this anymore. I mean, what was it? You know,
honestly, it had become a time where emotionally and like will and worth, like I was tired of being beat. You know, I was just tired, and just like a light of me was just like, go,
Done,
go, don't come back, no matter.
Nothing's worse than this, basically.
Right.
So what?
Exactly.
So what does it matter?
I mean, they can threaten you. They can just tell you, hey, you ever decide to leave? We'll call the organization and have you pull back. We'll put you in another home, or you know, you become this. You'll end up in the juvenile hall because the cops are gonna be looking for you. Ultimately, I didn't care no more. I was gone. Like I was gone. So. And again, yeah, you're right. It wasn't what was out there. It was going to scare me. It was staying there.
Sure.
What was going to terrify me.
Yeah. So where'd you go?
First half a year it was abandoned houses.
Yeah. Wow.
It was. I can remember staying at some houses off of like Tulare and Chestnut area. And I used to go, and you can see like they're remodeling. And I'm like, okay, that's the house tonight. You know, in the morning I would wake up to people trying to come in the door, and I was just out the door. Boom! Like, oh my God, I'm gonna get caught in somebody else's house, but it was just an instinct of survival.
Yeah.
Just trying to survive the whole me, you know.
So what'd you do? Like, I mean, were you working at that time? I mean, what'd you do? Like, how'd you feed yourself? You know.
Ultimately, like, it's like when you went to friends' houses, they would eat. Hey, you want some? Remember the old telephones? Or you had like the quarters in there. I would go and look in the little things, or hit the little button, make sure something popped out. I remember like saving up for honey buns, finding like pennies and stuff on the floor because they're like 35 cents. So I was like, I'm gonna walk into the store and just get it like this. So it was different aspects of that actually made me like helped me survive, you know. And nobody would have known at the time because like even when I went to a friend's house, hey, can I wash up? Hey, can I take a shower? Just a backpack, you know. So you learn, you adapt.
Yeah.
What was your relationship like when you were going through the foster homes with your parents? I know you said you were separated from them at a young age, placed into the foster system. Did you ever come in contact with them? Did they attempt to, or did you want to? What was the relationship like?
Ultimately, my biological mom, she stayed away. I know through some foster systems, she tried to make contact, but protecting themselves, they kept her away. You know, they're not here right now, or they're like, you know, you can't contact them. So I didn't even find out that any of that until years and years later. And it wasn't until I was like 28, and I was able to establish a relationship with my biological mother. But then that was short-lived because a year later she died. So you're dealing with like that. So I'm trying to build that and then having something taken away.
Also, probably, I mean, a good thing you got to reconnect with her, I guess, and rekindle that at least before she passed away. That's a good thing. That's good.
Yeah.
Remove some question marks.
So when did it go from abandoned house, or friend's house? When were you able to kind of get on your feet a little bit, or did that point ever come, you know, for a while, I guess?
It didn't come for a while. I mean, I found myself struggling with stuff, you know, ultimately selling. You know, I became a small-time dealer here, or ended up going up to a big-time dealer. And then, you know, of course, I ended up meeting my first ex-wife, and then that's when everything started to connect. But I was still running stuff here in town. Ultimately, you know, I had a crew that was working for me. I was just ultimately doing a lot of things here. And then I, of course, living that life, you know, you get jumped, you get robbed and stuff like that. So it was just basically for me, and it's hard even now to even go back to it, because it's like what I was doing now that I know, it wasn't bad, but ultimately I was just trying to survive. And then like a lot of the stuff that I was doing, it kind of put me like really at risk. And then when I was starting to, when my first ex-wife, she was born with my son. It kind of went to he was born, and then ultimately I ended up getting locked up. And then it was looking at that jail cell and looking out. I was like, no, it's enough. Like I cannot continue to raise my son like that.
Locked up for selling?
No, actually, I had a really bad temper, so it was a fit of five. They came to my house, and I was like, and I hit him across the head with a baseball bat, and I ended up doing some serious time for that.
How
Here
long?
in Fresno?
Here in Fresno.
How long?
I was looking at maybe 15, 20.
Oh, wow.
But at that point in time, it was like, no, this is not. I can really say honestly, like, it was kind of like a blessing, but not, because who gets off on stuff like that? You know, who says ultimately like, you don't get off, you know, on hurting somebody like that, you know? So, it wasn't until that moment where I felt like, you know what, it's time for me. And I didn't get off easy. I mean, I still had to do almost 380 hours of community service. Had to pay for every single bit of that. Of course, anger management classes came with it. And that was pretty penny. I mean,
Did you still have to go to prison as well, or no?
no, they actually voided that whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And again, I say that maybe that life wasn't for me, because everything that came into suit of that was a lawyer stepped in and was like, hey, I'll take his case pro bono. Let me, you know, he heard my backstory. He heard my rough upbringing. But I even told the lawyer, I'm not using that as an excuse, but it really comes down to how we, and this is what I tell my oldest son. I said, I had to raise myself, teach myself how to be a father and a man while raising you to be a better man.
That's a lot.
So it was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then the people on top, I mean, the people that you were supposed to be trusted to be pseudo parents were abusing you. I mean, you know, and so you have to, it's not only did you never get that, you were also like mistreated on top of that. So I mean, like that's a lot to unpack. So I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, kind of along what you were saying, I mean, managing a traumatic upbringing, the parents are absent, and so now you're wanting to be a better father or the best father you can be. What guided you on that? Because, you know, some of these things are heavy factors in how you implement being a father. So what are you looking after? What was your go-to on, like, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to implement, you know, obviously you have that heart inside to you because you've been out there. You know, you've seen some dark places. How are you going to transform that into the light that you're going to show your son?
A lot of that I had to, before I even started all that, I had to make closure with my biological father, because ultimately it was a life pattern, honestly. His biological father left him when he was a kid, and then my biological father left me when I was a kid. But he also endured a lot of abuse within the family. So he used to be, and when they say kids don't know or kids do not see, they do.
Oh, totally.
When you're 3 or 4 years old, you're just looking at your mother like, what is that big old black thing on your eye?
I mean, that's why we joke, right? When our kids do something, you watch his kids, they do what you do. Watch my kids, and our wives say the same thing, like, oh, no, that's why. You know why. I mean, right? That's across the board.
And it is. And so, for me to close that circle, I had to make peace because when your biological father disowns you, you're dead to me. You're not my son. What you do is not what I do. And he comes from a life of gangs and drugs and stuff like that. So I had to close that door in order to seal that cycle and have my boys be different. So that was where I ultimately started. And I was like, you know what? I cannot have them be like this. I have to show them a different way. And so that ultimately that was started the light. I mean, I had to turn away from a lot of stuff that I did before. And ultimately, when they say when you turn your back on a lot of it, you're labeled as something different. You know, you're oh, you left the thing, you
Yeah.
did this. You're just labeled different. And that was for years. I didn't really care. I mean, I don't care. I run into somebody today and they were like, oh, you left this and you're that. You're labeled as this. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm still alive. I'm still out here. I'm still not locked up. I'm still raising my kids, and I'm an active member in their lives.
I mean, you're still trying. I mean, for if nothing else, I mean, you had, in my view, you had plenty of reasons to throw in the towel or to, you know, pursue a wrong course. I mean, I think it's just worth, I mean, at least you're making the effort, you know? So if you're, okay, so you ended up doing community service, like for when that situation arose with was a police officer that you had hit or something?
No, it was rival.
Oh, rival. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So to me, like, you've got a lot of trauma and abuse to unpack. People who've done wrong by you, a lot of wrong, you know, biological parents, but also the foster families that you like lived with. And then but you know, I think you aptly recognize something, or you said something that it sounds like you recognized, okay, I have a reason to be upset with these people, but ultimately that's not going to help me here. I have a situation and a cycle that I got to break free of, you know, that I need to, and life changes I need to make. And playing the victim, or, you know, acknowledging that I've been abused or, you know, been mistreated, that's not going to get me anywhere. So it sounds like you reached a point. I guess at what point were you able to finally unpack and let go of, you said get closure, like
Right.
let go of the trauma and of all the wrong that was done to you. And while also, so there's two things. You have to unpack that, and then you've also got life changes. I mean, you're dealing, you've got, you know, some lifestyle things that aren't going well. That's a lot to change, to unpack the baggage and then to also make, you know, lifestyle changes. So like, how did you accomplish those two things?
It was a fight in itself, honestly. And to in light of what you're saying is, I had trust issues. You know,
I would assume so.
The people that I trusted the most, the people I trusted the most, especially when it came to the abuse. You know, especially even like I'm proud to say it now, because before I was embarrassed to say it before. I mean, who would want to talk about, you know, a man actually really assaulting you and raping you and saying, oh, it's okay, you know, it'll be good, you know. It's ultimate, you trust. I trust in you because I thought at that time, like, hey, I'm a kid, I'm doing what I'm told, you know what I'm saying? And this is this what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, or it was just a confusing time where I shut down for so long. So in order for me to unload the package and wrap it up, and I had to deal with that ultimately. And a lot of that I'll get into when I got into my sports, because it ultimately helped close that package. Greed, I mean, love that greed. Oh, we love you, we'll take care of you. But what did they get every month?
Money.
Got they got a paycheck. And was I going to the school in the best fit clothes? No.
Sure.
Was I going to field trips with all the kids? No. Was I bringing a dish to the table like everybody else? So all he does is eat here, and he doesn't bring nothing to our parties. And, you know, I mean, be made fun of because your hair was long. You know, people just pantsing me and being bullied. Like, I mean, like, you just deal with all kinds of stuff just growing up. So you're dealing with the aspects of that. So love that agreed. Trust issues. I say ultimately the whole thing, I say like the 7 deadly sins. You know, like, you just ultimately just dealing with a lot of people sinning. So fast forward, still dealing with, and what led me to changing my life around, it was enough it was my son in the glass mirror, you know, and I ultimately ran. I mean, I started building my life for my kid. I started working full time. I started working 2 jobs. I shut down.
Working where?
I was working at Mago Auto Body and like rallies, and then I had like the jack of all trades. I'm telling you, Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah,
coming home smelling like a donut. I'm telling you. I don't know if you're giving me a hug because of my donut smell.
I was like, that could be a plus sometimes,
right? Or So I just started working. Instead of hustling, I became a man. I started becoming a man. I started working all hours, working 2 jobs, just busy providing.
What? So, when did the switch flip? I don't want to deal. I don't want to sell. I want to work. When did that switch flip?
Like, this is it. You know what I mean?
Ultimately, I didn't want to see I didn't want to look at my kids through the mirror anymore.
So it was the kids. It was the kids were the
ultimately was
motivation.
kids.
It's like, hey, I want to provide for them in an honest way. I want to be, and I want to be the example for them.
It really gave me that opportunity to say, hey, you know what? This is where you can make your life change.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be like them, or you don't want to be like anybody in your past, this is where you do it. You go out and you prove them wrong. You go out and you prove the system wrong. Because when you have somebody like me, when you go to in front of the judge, oh, no, we'll see you again.
Yeah.
Or the lawyer, oh, we'll get you out this time, but next time it ain't gonna be that.
Yeah.
Or biological father, I don't care what you do, you're dead to me. So ultimately it's like, you know what? I'm tired of trying to fit into the world that ultimately says I'm gonna fail, and I want to be a part of the world that's actually gonna say, hey, you know what? I want to see you succeed.
That's interesting, because one of the a lot of people's, not a lot, but some people's driving forces can kind of be what you would think is not. When no one's cheering for you, that's like when I'm like, okay, now I'm really going to lay it down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the best. Like, everyone wants you to break. It's like, yeah, nah, let's go.
And also that was a switch. So it was my son. My firstborn son is actually what changed. It was like ultimately like I don't want him to have to endure anything. I know he made a comment one time. He says, "Dad, because I want to be just like you," and that kind of hurt, like a little bit. He goes, "Because you're like, because I hold this front where I have to hide everything. So I'm when I come through the door, I'm just like, no facial expression, no, just like this tough, I call it the turtle because you're hard on the outside, but you're soft on the inside. It's my spirit animal.
That's good.
And he's like, I just want to be like you. And I told him and it was really like, I sat down with him. I was like, you do not want to endure what I had to or see what I had to. I go, so I'm me because of me. I want you to be you because you're you. So ultimately, like they took to that. So
working 2 jobs, and then what?
It was all about working 2 jobs for a long while. Then I was like, you know what?
Where are we at this point? 23, 22, 24?
Yeah, 23, 24.
Okay.
23, 24. I started working. I shut myself. So the best thing they say you can do is shut yourself from the things that draw you.
Did you finish your high school degree or no?
No.
Wow.
I didn't graduate. I didn't actually graduate until I was like 27, 29, somewhere around there.
Okay.
I actually went to MA school at 25, 24. It was like I was finally like, you know what, I'm going to go do something. It's like medical assistant. A lot of people are like, what, medical assistant? Like, really? Like, who? I don't see you as a somebody in the medical field. So I went to medical school at ILT right down the street. I graduated from there after a hardship because one of my cousins, he passed away. He was murdered out on Belmont. So I took a small break. I ended up graduating from there. And I got right into a job. So with me being a hard-working person as I was, and ultimately changing and let me tell you, my past didn't stop haunting me. If people thought like, hey, you know what, you got away from that, no, my past haunted me all the way up into years. I'm 41 now, and it still haunts me to this day. I got hired right here at Cancer Care Associates, when it was right down the street. Then that's when I first got my first different perspective of life. You're dealing with your life, you're dealing with everything that I've been through, and then now you're dealing with people who are ultimately fighting for their lives. So I'm just like, wow, every day they come here for treatment. Every day they're looking for a hope of life,
cancer patients.
Yes, cancer patients. And when they would come in, they would share their stories with me of how they're struggling with me being by themselves. Some family members are there. Some family members are just being there because they're obligated to be there. And so it just gave me a whole different perspective of life.
It's interesting to see everyone else's stories, isn't it?
Yes.
You would not expect 99% of what you're about to hear from. That's like my favorite part about working with people is you don't know where they're coming from, and it really gives you like a really good perception on why people see things differently.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not gonna lie, that was my first. I think that was like 2009. That was my first time I ever knew about running. Honestly, it was a Dr. Moffitt that was there, and I remember one of the other medical assistants comes up and she says, "David, Dr. Moffitt's getting a team together." Like, I was like, "What do you mean a team?" It's like, "Yeah, we're gonna run 2 cities." Knew nothing,
Oh, there it
nothing
is.
about running. I was like, "What?" So here I go. I was a major cigarette smoker. I was like, man,
Perfect.
right? Working in the cancer ward and smoking cigarettes, like, go hand in hand, right? So I'm like, man, right? So I ultimately it was a cervical cancer run. And I'm struggling. I seen photos to this day, and I'm just like trucking along, heavy set. I'm just like breathing really hard. I'm like, whew, this is work, So I'm like, okay, I got this, right? I ended up finishing. I remember that I was hurting.
Like
Legs
a 5K or something like
It was a
that?
5K.
Okay, cool.
And I thought I was doing
Perfect.
pretty good. And I hear people zoom, zoom,
Yeah.
I'm like, man. I mean, I was like, but after that first 5K, it was a cervical cancer run down in, I think it's now what is, it's kind of right there about the 168, that little area.
Yeah, where the parks are. Clovis,
Yeah,
like
that little
Clovis and
area, yeah.
168 area. Yeah.
I remember it was out there. And I was like, wait a minute. I felt a sense of ease when I ran, should I say. And so then they're all like, hey, we're going to do 2 cities. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. Do nothing. Still don't know nothing about running. Nothing. I'm like, running down the street, I thought I was running quick. I was like, oh, I'm running fast. I thought I was like one block to the next block to the next block. And even today, I passed by that same area where I started. I'm like, dude. I thought I was quick. I'm like, no. So, and no watch. Didn't know what time or mileage I was doing. I was just going out there and getting it done. So ultimately, that was 2009. I didn't start picking up anything again until maybe, let me see, 2016, 15. So because I was
Right.
going through life there again. I was married and then got through a divorce and then married again and going through some stuff there and then getting divorced, and that was it for me.
Okay.
Two failed marriages, I was done. That's it. What I'm saying? I got 3 kids from my
That's
first
a lot.
ex-wife, and I'm good.
So you can change your life from this really heavy upbringing, and even on the way up, you can still hit a couple of speed bumps.
Little
huh?
speed bumps,
Interesting.
little harder ones. Broke my axle a little bit. I'm telling you. So ultimately, I started running. So my son tells me, "Hey, Dad, I don't want you smoking anymore." And I'm a stressor, so I was smoking a lot. Because I don't want to see. I guess he saw one of those trachs on the show.
Oh,
TV
yeah.
show. He's like, "Dad, I don't want to
Those
you
are
smoking."
great at scaring people.
Yeah.
Right. I said, okay. So, what happens when you drop one habit? You pick up
Yeah.
another.
What's
So
next?
I started running. I remember that first year, I went half marathon crazy. I mean, I was going 10 marathons in 1 year, and I was just half marathons in 1 year, and maybe 12 getting in there, and I was still running. Still didn't know, no coach, no nothing. I was just like, I'm just gonna go, Then I was like, let me do a full marathon, and start doing full marathons, and and there's a reason why I figured out why I was running so much and why I was doing what I was doing. I started really realizing, because ultimately I ended up doing 2 full Ironmans, 28 half marathons, 5, they call it the Epic 5, which is 5 Ironmans back to back in Hawaii, which came out to like 704 miles.
And be clear. So back to back, meaning Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no stopping, 5 full Ironmans in a row.
In a row. No, so I got 5 hours of sleep in 1 week.
Ugh.
And that was on a plane, a ferry boat, and another plane. And it was just like, ultimately like, oh,
Let's
man.
do that next year. We'll do that next year for sure.
Hey.
Tons of time to do that, right?
Tons. Hey, they got
My wife would love that.
It was like, oh, man, we can get into that in a bit. But,
Wow.
So ended up doing that. And I did like 10 half Ironmans. So all that was within like maybe 7 years of
Goodness
all
gracious.
sitting,
All in.
right?
No coaching and just kind of winging it and
I was no coaching for a long while.
jeez.
And then I ended up connecting with a local here in town by the name of Farron.
Yeah, Farron Reed.
Farron Reed,
Love
right?
Farron.
And I was his coaching me for a while, and then I ended up just throwing it out there. He didn't want me to do the Epic 5. He says, David, I want you to do 5. I can see you doing 5 Ironmans throughout the year, but not 5 back-to-back. So hands down was like, no, don't do it. But the life in me and the fight in me was like, I gotta go
That
do
means
it.
I'm going to do it.
That means I'm gonna do it, right?
No means yes.
So the question is always like, David, why do you do what you do? Why do you endure all that you do? And that's always the question. Always one question is why. And so my answer is always the same. It's when I get up to any start line of any race, if I say, Lord, today we are going to pray for this one testimony alone, the abuse, and the victims of that abuse, and the violator of that abuse, and everybody who was involved in that, we're going to pray for that today. And when I do the 13.1, the 70.3, when I do that, I pray for myself. I pray for everybody involved. I endure each of the pain, the suffering, the dehydrations, the aches, the knees, everything that comes with Ironman and running, right? And I tell myself, like, even through the middle of the race, like, you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing all the way through. When I get to that finish line, I raise my hands up in victory and says, Lord, that will no longer hold me back. And I release that to you. And that was a lot of races. So I feel at ease. It gives a new sense to I break the chain to the stuff that holds me back.
The racing unpacked the trauma.
Yes.
I mean, that helped bring the closure.
Ultimately,
and,
yes.
and it's what helped you feel like, you know, I guess it's almost symbolic or metaphorical that, like, the pain that you were carrying, it's like letting that go and overcoming it.
Correct.
Basically. Yeah. That's good.
I can't think of a better way to do it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, even for me, like, the pain that I endure, I always tell myself that's what you deserve. Because look at the lives you affected, even when you hurt people. Like, you need to take that on. You need to be able to see it through, you know. So it was just kind of hand in hand for me.
I think he needs to be a dig athlete.
Oh yeah, for sure. Jump on, fit right in.
So what's next? What's the next races? What's your training currently?
Right now, since I had surgery, I had a hernia surgery not so long ago.
Hernia buddies. Hey, all right.
I knew that would work out.
Sweet.
There it is.
Don't you love hernias? I know I do.
Man, I tell you that much right now. I'm telling you, it's a whole nother mental game.
Tell you what, because I've run my share of halves, and I've done a half Ironman as well, and full marathons. Age just sucks, and the hernia has been, because I'm so used to running's always been there for me, and I've also been hooked in it in my own way. And when you get the hernia and you kind of get, like, derailed from what your normal performance is and what you know and you love, and, like, it's frustrating, but then it's also like, it's like, okay, now, and then you start hearing people like, oh yeah, don't know if you're gonna be able to do it anymore, or probably it's time. And now I'm just looking at them like, okay, now because you just said that also, now I have to be even faster than what I was before. Like, that's become my mindset. I'm just like, okay, not only now will I not stop running, now I'm gonna be faster than I was before, just because you said that. I remember the first doctor kind of gave me this little arm pat, and it's like, it might be, I'm just like, don't say the rest of what you're gonna say. I don't want to hear it, because I will figure out a way to make this work. And so right now I'm working for Boston, and I'm just like, I tell Sean, I text him every day, it's like, it's Boston or nothing.
Boston.
But it's Boston or nothing.
Not every day. It's every 20 minutes.
It's Boston or nothing. Like, if we have a day that's a little rougher, and Sean's, kind of he's my accountability, he's my coach, and he's rooting me on. It's just like, okay, it's Boston or nothing. Like, we figured this out, and it's freaking hard. Hernias are no joke, dude. And mine's a sports hernia, but at the end of the day, like, okay, if I can overcome a hernia, and if I can do this and qualify for Boston, it's like, what's next? What else what else can I do? I just, I know I've got more in the tank.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's definitely it's created new frustration, but it's added to the motivation.
Yes.
Like, I'm not done.
That's right. Don't count me out
The
yet.
ability to like adapt and coordinate. Like, I mean, we've actually put a lot of
Well,
work
the work. Well,
honest,
it's like you said. I mean, I used to be like you. It's like, I just train, just run. I wasn't wearing a watch really or anything or tracking heart rate, and I could just go out and make top 5 in my age group or whatever. And now the work I have to put in just to perform with the hernia and the age is so much more. But even though it's a lot more work and more frustrating, it's like it's that much more rewarding, and like you feel that much more accomplished.
It
Like,
is rewarding.
I
for
can
sure.
still get this done, and I can still figure it out. And it's like Sean said, I can adapt. Like, there's always a way to figure it out. There really is.
Yes.
But it always takes work, and it takes a plan,
time.
and it takes work. And if you do it, then you can make it happen. But so what's next for you? What do you got your hernia, but are you still hoping to come back then? Are you training for another?
I was trying to do a comeback tour.
Yeah.
I was shooting.
Those are the best ones.
Well,
Right?
You see, I just now I won't even accept a no. I mean, he's coming back from. He just had his femur shaved. I had my hernia, and I think
My femur shaved.
I think that
Sounds so intense.
Right?
I think that you just gonna have to come with us on our dig
To
tour
Woodlands?
To the Woodlands.
You've done
We're-
Texas, haven't you?
I've done Texas.
He's done Woodlands.
Hey, those wins.
yeah.
But we right now we do our track Wednesdays and we do our long rides on Saturdays, and so it'd be but we're all working right now toward. I'm doing Boston. Sean's working toward Woodlands, and if I'm feeling good enough, I think Sean will probably suck me in at least for the half. If not, if I can feel ambitious enough, I'll go for the full. But I might try to join him also for that too. But he might have to get on board with our dig crew. I don't know. We'll see if we can persuade you.
Welcome.
Go
Go
Go ahead. Go.
I was just saying, I love you've shared a ton of stuff, right? Some of the similarities that I see, we're all pretty similar here in terms of what we do. I'm big on dark places to see the light, but not just see the light, but help others understand that if you're in dark places, there's always light. There's a way we can adapt. There's a way to find it. It doesn't mean it's fair. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be, quickly approached. It's not going to happen that way. But you put out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars. Like, I love my scars. It's taken me a while to get there because, listen, I'm content with my life. I'm happy. I've got a lot going for me, and I love it. We've got a lot going. We've got all kinds of good stuff going. But let me tell you, and we've talked about this before, there are speed bumps everywhere, and they're coming. It's not if, it's when they're coming.
Come.
And I've learned over the past few years alone that when you make mistakes and you're like really heavy, ridden in your life path, and you mess something up, there are ways to look back at your decisions and appreciate those scars. I love my scars. They're awesome, I love that. That was my favorite part that you wrote.
And something I've, you said, enough is enough. That resonates with me. I think everyone's been abused in some way by someone in a different form or fashion. Yours is. That's certainly. I'm not trying to compare. That's an intense journey.
I work with Aaron every day.
Fair. But having dealt with, in my business career and other things, I've certainly dealt with abusive people, and I can appreciate and relate to, it's unfortunate that some people don't know when to say, enough is enough, and they just think that I always have to tolerate, someone like this somewhere, wherever I go. Actually, no, you don't.
No.
You can always, go somewhere else, seek out a new opportunity. We are, you're free to choose, your path.
All right.
And sometimes you do hit, that point where you just need to say enough, and we've discussed on this show, whether it's cutting somebody out of your life that you need to cut out, if you need to get into a different, living situation or work situation. I I like that. You know, like you said, enough is enough, and sometimes that's what you just need to do, and you just need to, without hesitation, create a new situation and put yourself in a different, environment. And I like what your follow-up was to that, if I caught it right, was you were kind of sick of the people that were putting you down or telling you no, that you can't do this, or you can't make this of yourself, and you wanted to seek out the ones that were going to positively reinforce you. And
small circle.
Well, Sean and I have talked about that a few
that's
times.
That's like the motto: shrink your circle
on this
up
podcast.
the value.
And I don't know if it's just that people think it makes you an unpleasant, or like it's like, I just have to get along with everyone. I have to include everyone in my life. Well, once again, no, you don't actually. And I would even argue that if you do, you will keep people in your life that will hold you back, that will, be naysayers, that will be negative or not build you up. And, it's okay to find ways to get those people out of your life, and surround yourself with people that will, pull for you, root for you, hold you accountable. But that, like, hey, if that, I want to be a medical assistant. Oh, great, bro. Go be a medical assistant. That's good for you. Hey, I want to get into running. Awesome. Go do running, and so I think that it's funny. Those two things like kind of go hand in hand. It's like when you realize that I need to make a change or get certain people or certain things out of my life, I actually believe in my experience that most people don't do that. Mm-hmm. I think they're used to, whether it's the same old friends or same old people or, same old situation. There's comfort in that, I guess. And they don't like the unknown or whatever. But, I've left some difficult situations similar, where I wasn't sure how I was going to provide for my family next, or what the next move entailed. I only knew that I had to make a change. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in some cases where God spoke to me, I knew specifics of where I needed to go, but I didn't know why. Right. And, sometimes you just got to recognize that enough is enough, and it's going to work out at the next place. And whenever I followed that, much like you, it's always been, I've never regretted that decision. It's always, now it's never been an easy decision. Mm-hmm. It's often a difficult one, having to create a new circle of friends, or, move to a new place, or, pursue this new opportunity. But I've always been grateful and been bettered, when I've made that hard decision. And I think I see that a lot in your story, which I really appreciate. So
ultimately, I mean, the last event I did was 704 miles. Before I even started that one, a lot of people were like, I was representing USA, California. And a lot of people were like, thinking I was doing this for this like fame and up there, and, but nobody really realized that was me putting everything into one shoe. One race, 704, me and my God, and get it done. A lot of people think that was for that, but for me, it was the rebuild of me. Put it all together and just be a new me at the end of that whole thing. So what's next for me, and it's like, can anything really compare, So I feel like the next calling for me is it's called the Uberman. It's down in Santa Catalina Islands, swimming from Catalina Islands down to LA, 21 miles of swimming.
Swimming's definitely not. I mean, I like swimming, but like endurance swimming's not my jam if it's outside of an Ironman.
Wow. And then followed by 400 miles through the nice little Hills of Angels, and then down into the Death Valley, and then running up Mount Whitney, 135.
Easy.
So
you do that in a couple hours,
problem, right? Yeah. Just do it in my sleep.
Okay. Well, you lift a lot, so I'm sure you'll be. Is Farron going to coach you to that?
No, I don't think he even knows. Nobody really knows.
I'm going to make sure we invite Farron on our ride tomorrow morning. Like, hey, we chatted with David yesterday.
That's what. But
well,
I'll let you break the news. I'm just kidding.
All the best on the next one. That sounds incredible. And I mean, certainly kudos on everything you've accomplished so far. So
yeah, career-wise, I mean, I work at CRMC. I'm an intensive care tech with pediatrics, intensive care with the babies and stuff.
Yeah,
that's great.
And I also coach and mentor elementary school kids in sports and behavioral.
Okay, so very cool.
So
Well,
you got it going.
Got it going.
good stuff. I mean, sounds like you've got a good purpose and renewed purpose, and and as for that next race, I mean,
Have
goodness,
fun.
yeah, I don't know that
We'll
I
follow. We'll watch.
Yeah,
We'll cheer,
I'll
we'll cheer
certainly
you
be paying
on.
attention.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I heard
We'll
the
give you some
Woodlands.
dig stickers to put on
There you
your
go.
surfboard when
That's
you're
right.
halfway
No.
through the swim.
That's right.
Maybe going back to the Woodlands is in the books now.
Maybe.
That's more like it.
That's
Look,
good.
we look forward to sending you harassing texts about bike rides and runs in the near future.
Good deal.
Definitely. Good
Well,
deal.
thanks for
Alright.
being with us today.
Oh, no, thank you for
Appreciate
having me. Thank you
All
for
right.
having me.
Thanks.